Everyone. I'm Angela Skirtu, and I'm a licensed therapist, marriage and family therapist, and an AASECT certified sex therapist. So today's video is about why you should stay in therapy. The most common way that couples come into therapy is they're in crisis in some form, and they will stay in therapy for around 3 months, 2 to 3 months. And part of the reason that they'll end therapy at the end of the 2 to 3 months is that they feel like they've gotten a little better, they're not in crisis anymore, so they decide, okay, we're done, I don't want to do anymore. The problem with that strategy, though, is that long-lasting change doesn't occur. So every crisis eventually passes, but then you go back to the old habits that you have. So one of the reasons why you should stay in therapy is that things have not actually changed. You may have talked through some of the crisis, but you still have some old patterns that you guys are getting into, fights that aren't changing. And so one of the things that therapy is meant to do after the crisis is work on the actual issues, not just the crisis that brought you in. Another reason why people should stay in therapy a little longer than the first 2 to 3 months is that habits take anywhere from 28 days to 257 days to actually become habits. So essentially, you may start talking, you may start trying things with each other and getting along a little bit better, but then you don't end up doing anything that is going to last long term. So for example, even if you do develop some communication tips or habits, then you'll likely revert to your old habits because we're very much creatures of habit. It's hard for us to change, and we are all pretty stubborn people. So then the final reason that you really should come in and stay a little bit longer than that first 2 to 3 months is that real trust doesn't actually start to be built until after the honeymoon period. So we therapists call the honeymoon period that first 2 to 3 months. And basically what happens is everybody has this time where you get into a fight, you kind of have a crisis, and then about 2 to 3 months after, we call the honeymoon period, where you're trying to make up, you're trying to do whatever you can to improve the situation, and then you go back to status quo. But if you start doing work in that crisis and you continue to do the work after the crisis, what happens is that's when you're actually building trust with each other, because you're not just doing things to get each other back or to win each other over. You're actually doing things beyond that crisis to really make lasting long change. And so why trust doesn't get built is you just come in for the crisis and you move on. And what it does is, even in the crisis, you're not taking in all of the information that you need. So for example, the crisis mode actually is a type of fight or flight. And so you're really in a space where you're not taking in all the information. And so once that crisis is over, then what happens is you finally are starting to let those lessons sink in and learn a little more. So the next time you start to feel a little better after therapy, rather than saying, I think we're doing fine, let's just finish this, go into your therapist and say, now I want to get to the meat of therapy. We want to learn these communication skills while we're in a good place, because that's when